Timothee Chalamet is Bob Dylan in A Complete Unknown. It comes out on Christmas Day. We're going to review it. Let's go. A Complete Unknown stars Timothee Chalamet, Edward Norton, Ellie Fanning, Monica Barbero, and is directed by James Mangold.
Remember me. How about that Joan Baez, folks? Well, she's pretty. Sings pretty. Maybe a little too pretty.
What's up, guys? Welcome to a brand new 2024 review. I'm recording this for a second time because I forgot to hit the record button on my audio the first time around. But that's okay, because I need to tell you about this movie. It's called A Complete Unknown. It is a biopic about Bob Dylan. And first off, let's give you a quick plot synopsis. Really, do I have to give you a quick plot synopsis? I can tell you the period of time that it covers because this one is a little different. Most biopics, it seems like you get like a time span of their rise and their fall, and they all seem to kind of have the same template. Not all of them, but a lot of them do. This one chooses to focus in on a singular part of an artist's life, Bob Dylan in his 20s, in the 60s. And I like that about this movie. I like that it doesn't, because it would have had to be like a TV series if it tried to cover his entire life up to now. Again, this just focuses on one time period. And because of that, I think this stands out as one of the better biopics I've seen in quite a few years. Really, really solid. You do have kind of I guess we'll call it the multiverse of biopics, because you have Johnny Cash in this movie, played by Boyd Holbrook. He really just kind of pops in and out. He's not like a major character in the movie like, say, the rest of them. Really, it focuses more on young Bob Dylan, starting out before he got signed, and then showing his life up through the 60s and that era, and how he caught the folk music world by storm. And it ends with him kind of turning electric. That's not a spoiler if you know Bob Dylan, right? And before I dive into pros and cons, just a little about me. I am a musician. I play the drums, and I always gravitate towards good biopics. And I don't even need to like the artist to watch a good biopic, or even more so a documentary. I love just the whole world of music making and what makes artists tick. And I don't need to necessarily like their music. And I think that's what makes for a really good biopic, is not liking the artist that much, and still, you got a great movie out of it. And I'm not the biggest Bob Dylan fan. I don't have a single Bob Dylan album. And some would say his singing is not their cup of tea, but I think this movie really focuses on the artist and the poet that he is, and was, especially in the 60s. This was a groundswell period. This was a young folk singer revitalizing a subgenre of music that was mostly old men. Very talented old men, and that's where Edward Norton comes into play, because he plays Pete Seeger, who sort of discovered Bob Dylan, the young Bob Dylan. And man, you just cannot help but enjoy him as a character in this movie. Timothee Chalamet deserves an Oscar for this. He is phenomenal. He becomes the character. Much like what Jim Carrey did in Man on the Moon, how he became Andy Kaufman, so much so that it was annoying, the cast and crew around him. Timothee Chalamet, he is Bob Dylan. He immersed himself in this role so much that I would imagine it might be hard to shake Bob Dylan off, kind of like Austin Butler when he played Elvis. It was a little jarring at times, and I mean that in a good way, because sometimes I forgot I was looking at Timothee Chalamet. He looks so much like Bob Dylan, but more importantly, he sounds just like him. And taking the performance that extra step and actually playing the guitar and singing, he does it all. That just makes the character so much more enjoyable to the audience, and it feels more real, right? You forget that this is a movie just because of Timothee Chalamet's effort in making this performance as authentic as possible. You can tell that he really cared about doing Bob Dylan justice, because that's a stressful role to take on, and you don't want to screw it up. Also, don't think that this just focuses on music. Yeah, the music is a big part of it, but also just the women in his life, because, again, he was in his 20s, And you have these two characters at that time in his life that were really important. Ellie Fanning plays Sylvie, who was a young woman who he got into a relationship with before he even became famous. So she was there through that. And then Monica Barbaro plays Joan Baez, who was a famous singer back then, who kind of took Bob Dylan under her wing a little bit, because she was already, a star and he was up and coming, but she saw the talent that he had and how they had sort of a relationship. So yeah, a lot of great stuff in this movie, and you're really just going to soak up just the scenery around, the setting of the 60s, seeing the buildings and the cars. I always loved that stuff. I love that period of time in American culture, and New York at the time. I think this movie itself really just oozes character. And Timothee Chalamet is really just infectious as Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan's a character, in this movie. You can't help but, you can't take your eyes off of him, just the way he acts and how unique he was. And it made me appreciate Bob Dylan and made me want to kind of, look into his catalog and maybe listen to some songs outside of the hits, which are in here. So yeah, giving this a super high purchase worthy for sure. Can't recommend A Complete Unknown enough. It is really the whole package in terms of a biopic. And let me know what you guys think of it when you see it. Also, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day. And on Fridays, we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me, Drumdums, on my social, support me on Patreon, buy me a coffee. And you guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Drumdum out.